Hi, I want to say welcome to the broadcast. I just thought I would share with you and anybody who's interested a few little updates about some of the double bind situations that occur within a high control organization. Of course, I've expressed from my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses, it represents a good microcosm of many systems and where things can potentially go wrong. Why? Because there's a human element. Wherever there's a human element, same kind of patterns can occur. Is it an attack on all Jehovah's Witnesses? No. I make a distinguishing mark between what is called a weed and wheat. Weed is somebody who perhaps makes a mistake or has an overinflated ego, or there has been some kind of theocratic failure or legal failure and is endeavoring to control the narrative, perhaps with their own authority, and protect themselves, protect their investment of time and energy or their social standing. So that happens in any system. It can happen in police, it can happen in law, all the way up to even Supreme Courts. So education facilities, medical facilities, you name it. These kind of issues occur. So when I talk like this, part of it is to have some sort of authentic communication means to make a record, to work things out, and to put things under critical examination and analysis. If I have to sign an affidavit for all of this information, I would. If I had to be under a polygraph about the things that have transpired, I'm quite willing to do that. And at the same vein, it's not an uncommon story. This is a story that as long as there have been humans on this planet, these kind of issues will affect the tribe. If you want to call it the global tribe, the planetary tribe, because we see that, all countries, whether it is a country at war or that by popular consensus has fallen out of favor, the fact is we're all interconnected. And all the more so now in this technology age, which has shrunk the planetary village more and more. So please bear with me, as I might not articulate these things in the most simple fashion, because it isn't simple. The reason why we have these problems is the complexity overreaches most people. So what is the issue here? So imagine a situation that many have struggled with, I've struggled with, where spiritual authority, in this case, let's say a religion, can be any kind of religion or any kind of structure, could be a medical facility which uses same kind of principles of authority to control and essentially with good motive to protect community and to remain functional for the tribe, but unfortunately becomes weaponized because there aren't the correct checks and balances in effect to recognize a double bind and say, oh yeah, here we have a catch-22 situation, a loop or a captive situation, a double bind, and it's been weaponized. Somebody's embarrassed, an authority is embarrassed. Why? Because if they are exposed, if there's disclosure as to what has exposes their behavior or they're trying to deal with things, then accountability is on them. So they shift accountability away. They find a fall guy, or they find somebody who is perhaps naive or ambitious like themselves, who's got their hand in the same kind of authority structure, and so they can develop a clique to protect, let's say for the greater good, the institution. But when it sacrifices individuals, in effect, what that does is it actually affects the institution. It actually affects those very people who have built up the authority structure. So the harm is actually coming upon them. Whether the gravity of that harm actually affects them in a lifetime or it affects further generations, the inevitability is that justice, if you want to call it universal justice, spiritual law, natural law, eventually it does have an impact. It has impacts in all kinds of ways that is not good for the tribe. It's not good for the planet. So when accountability is suppressed, even indirectly enabling abuse or actively involved in that abuse, and maintains plausible deniability, this is really striking at the heart of what the issue is. It's the spiritual abuse that is first and foremost, before it becomes language, before it becomes action. Supreme courts and the court system is incredibly sophisticated. If I think about South African law, I've heard people say we have a perfect law in South Africa. But yet, practically, what happens with that practical law? Well, you can have a situation where what is classified as criminal cartels can operate within the country, and it operates so deeply it can reach even into governance. It can affect that. And that's why there's all kinds of investigative, let's say, firewalls that are put in place to try and put in the necessary checks and balances so that these kind of abuses don't continue and it becomes an impossible place to even just walk down the road safely. And that is what's happened. That's why governments in other countries or in United Nations, they take a look at other countries and they say, hang on, you part of our club, you've agreed to be part of United Nations and to work for the welfare of the planet's tribe. All nations, peoples, tongues, lands. And so coming back to the experience that I have had with elders, not all elders, but the weak elements or the bad elements that are climbing on the backs of the good elements and shielding themselves. They frame their directives with words like this is loving counsel, knowing full well that their influence is leading to actions with very serious legal consequences. Now I'm going to focus in on one that has become apparent, and that is a matter of corporal punishment. For anybody in the know, one of the present serving governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, Jeffrey Jackson, made an incredible testimony or series of statements for the ARC, the Australian Royal Commission. Is that taboo, off-limits information for Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, it depends on who you're talking with. Some persons may say, oh, you should never be looking at this kind of thing. But the reality of the situation is the top tiers are very well aware of Australian Royal Commission. Service Desk, for instance, was instructed, sit down and watch this thing. Take a look. aren't we pleased about what our governing body representative Jeffrey Jackson has done? He was under tremendous pressure, but he handled himself like the Apostle Paul. And we congratulate him. What do we learn from it? Well, we learn about how to use the code within the religious structure, the doctrine, to be able to make an answer. If it means spiritual warfare or using some kind of deceptive means, well, then yes. But then make sure that it is done within the legal framework so that you buy enough time to be able to defend the faith. Like the Apostle Paul, who was both versed in Roman law and in Jewish, a Pharisee. Well versed. So well versed that he could appeal to Caesar and governors. And the governors would say, well, Paul, the longer you actually stay here, you may actually convince us about your faith. Now, I don't want to go into how religions may be following a Roman pattern and the complexities of the psychospiritual psychology that's involved and that has been used, not just to bad effect, but largely we had hoped to good effect, to produce a people throughout history that's gotten us to where we are right now. We've built up technologies through families and through cultures to where we are presently in this world of now emerging artificial intelligence, where we're saying things hang in the balance. They could swing one way to complete annihilation, or they could usher in this wonderful utopia that we could even link to being part of God's kingdom and saying, well, that's a manifestation of God's perfect supreme law coming out through artificial intelligence mirroring us, mirroring our dark and light sides of our personalities, the profane and the sacred. So let's go through my attempt to frame this, or to talk through this, or to try and mentally process what's going on. Imagine a situation: elder gets up in authority in a congregation where the congregation has invited the public through ministry to say, well, come and join the congregation, join Jehovah's Witnesses, because we have a noble tribe that's looking after spirit and that's looking after welfare. And people do, they look at Jehovah's Witnesses and see the tie and they see the jacket, or clean shaven, or yes, now beards. And they go, I know Jehovah's Witnesses, very good people. Generally harmless, good to work with, good-humoured. And they retract it. Others can't stand Jehovah's Witnesses. They go, oh man, no, this is not good. We can clearly see some very serious problems here. And they might just focus in on doctrine and say, look, you can't, they've chosen a particular facet that I can't support. But let's be clear here, we're not looking at doctrine. We're looking at an ethic here. So I don't want to get into, all the different perspectives of religious outlook or metaphorical frameworks, or if you want to talk about UFO culture, that's a way of interpreting experiences, and persons say, oh, we believe in it or we don't, or we have to take this to some court discussion for disclosure because we need to examine it with critical thought and it needs to be all out in the open. Humans have all sorts of ways of presenting information and experiences to try and make sense of things. Like a Rorschach test. What do you see? Do you see a butterfly? Do you see a horned demon? Do you see something provocative, perhaps? It's open to how the observer is responding to that Rorschach pattern. Is it valid? Yeah, sure, it's valid, because that is the person who is observing, that is viewing and being asked to communicate. Well, what's on your mind is the first thing. So here's the scene. An elder in spiritual authority at the local congregation or church gets up in a public broadcast to the community that's on Zoom and is linked to other international countries, because some of the friends are traveling to other countries and they want to be linked into the local congregation. So now it's being broadcast to that country and that jurisdiction. And the elder or the ministerial servant gets up and says, yes, corporal punishment, as long as it's done in a loving, non-abusive way, please practice it. And by the way, if you don't accept our imperfect information, because we are imperfect humans, then we're going to imperfectly discipline you. And we're going to do that through a variety of ways. Shaming. Sociably, we're going to make it very difficult for your families and friends to be able to communicate with you in trust, because, yes, we count on the gossip culture to keep you in line when there is something like this authority telling you to do something that essentially is against the law. And when we say against the law, this is not something that is some noble stand in the Bible to uphold. This is something where there is some flexibility to be able to say, well, we can apply the letter of the law in this way and still find another way to discipline and keep rule with children. So corporal punishment, is this free speech? Many police and authorities can say, yeah, well, we can't step in if you're saying that there is an incitement to violence, unless a child actually now, after that event, where an elder has said, yes, corporal punishment is on the table, folks, because of the rod of discipline mentioned in the Bible. It's not just this ruler of God's law, it is not just a verbal standard or code of behavior. It actually means we can take out a stick and smack your backside, give you a spanking, get physical with you. And so when the child reports to a teacher or to a headmaster or to police, gets on the phone and says, oh yeah, mommy, daddy, or my guardian beat me, the police are obligated to make an investigation because of the law. That's what's been set in place. And so now when that report is effected, that's only the time that police can now intervene and say, oh yeah, what happened? Yeah, your congregation used its free speech and now they opened up themselves and whoever obeyed them within that system to now prosecution, potential prosecution, and a potential case where they've got to now see, well, to what extent was this abusive, and we've got to investigate, and we're obligated to put in time and energy from the state to get to the bottom of this. Do we now give the parent a warning? What sort of record is there now? And so when that happens, you can call that the backfiring. The congregation used its free speech to say, God is going to destroy this religion and that religion and this political system and this wicked governance, and the devil's going to go to prison and eventually be destroyed, and any who support it. And it ushers in this new kingdom or this utopia kind of society. And so in this backfiring, the elders go, oh, did this person beat their child? Well, we never told that person to do it. So that free speech has become a problem, but the religious authority is distancing itself. They say, we never told you to do it. We've always said to you, use your Bible-trained conscience. Be responsible. And if you carried out by your interpretation as a congregant or an associate what came through on the platform, well, each one carries their own load, do they not? Our legal system will not come in to defend you. You acted on your conscience. Jehovah God, as we have named him by Raymondus Martini. Jehovah gives you freedom. And when we say God, G-O-D, we haven't expressed how G-O-D could be us as guardians of doctrine, G-O-D. That we are Jehovah. No, we don't have to explain that. You think Jehovah is supreme consciousness or the ruler of the universe. Yeah, well, yeah, we teach that. And so now it gets into this play with words, this legalistic play, which becomes classic manipulation. And we are very grateful for the internet. And persons, again, with different beliefs or different experiences about this kind of thing, where it is accumulating and it is helping the planetary tribe, we hope, to get to a better place, because we don't want to shield leadership where it's gone wrong from accountability. If it's endeavoring not to be transparent, to stop disclosure, what are the legal means where we can bring in enough witnesses to say, oh, this is on the record? But instead, what has been happening, and still continues to happening, is this thing called gaslighting. Now, gaslighting is where, say for instance, your leader at the congregation has said, oh yes, use loving corporal punishment, which is against the law, but we're not going to mention it. And we're going to make you bear the full weight of the fallout. That's the gaslighting, to put it simply. So it sacrifices the vulnerable. And it's got an answer for that too. It says, well, Christ died, so you're a Christian, you're going to die for this. You die for your own belief. Oh, you thought you could use this congregation tribe to protect you? No, you can't. And when we've eliminated you by removal, which used to be called disfellowshipping, because you stood your ground and you said, yeah, but I thought I'm acting obediently by what this elder told me to do. But now you're telling me that I've acted on my own. I'm confused. What? Yeah. When they've eliminated that parent or that guardian, and the community is talking and saying, oh yeah, it's a child abuser that we've just eliminated, and brother so-and-so who was on the platform the other day is the same one who very, very difficultly removed him. Shame. Oh man, it's so difficult for our dear brother who's having to impart God's information and also mete out this incredible discipline. Let's go take him out for a meal and slip him a few bucks in his hand. Give him a green handshake. It's sacrificed that parent. I shouldn't be laughing because it's terrible, but this is how do I deal with these emotions? I've got to try and maintain some kind of sense of humor, even if it's a bit dark. So look, I apologize for that, because here we are. And so now the parent is out, and the child, guess what, is called a publisher. Still remains in the congregation. And so Auntie Susan comes up to little Joey and says, Joey, how are you doing? And Joey goes, well, Dad's been removed. Oh, why? Well, he gave me a beating. No, Joey, don't say this. Oh, good. Why? It's what happened. And now Joey is pulled into disciplinary action as an innocent whistleblower, as a child, because it's all about the reputation of the congregation now, the organization, the institution. There's no transparency because it's been closed doors. There's no meeting at the city gates where the tribe can actually sit in and listen to what's going on. And so many people find it difficult to articulate, I find it difficult to articulate this thing of double binds. It's the paradox. Supreme courts and the court system is designed, theoretically, to identify double binds and where people are caught in captive systems. That was what Jeffrey Jackson, member of the governing body, was doing with the ARC when he arrived in Australia, and somebody said, oh, we better capitalize this and bring him forward because something has got out of hand here. We can recognize psychologically people are trapped in this circular system, and we're not attacking a belief system. We're attacking when something goes wrong among the human element. But very often that something that goes wrong is framed as, oh, well, you're disloyal to Jehovah, you're disloyal to God, or you're disloyal to the religion. And now, guess what? You're going to face a penalty. So the spiritual advice coming through the elder is more than just advice. It's actually a direction that they're told, obey, 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 obey. We're told, obey. And somebody potentially can break the law. Does it happen? You bet it does. It absolutely does. Do police have those records? Yes. But elders are compartmentalized, so they might have a case that they have dealt with, but you have rotation going on, you have reassigning going on. And so it compartmentalizes and marginalizes. And the other thing too is they may be bound by non-disclosure agreements or this idea of clergy penitent privilege. So when consequences follow, the congregation punishes the person who disobeyed the law because they broke Caesar's law. They broke the superior authority's law, who is God's minister, to make sure that, you still drive down the road in your vehicle with a license that's issued by the municipality because we require that for safety. But then it punishes the child who speaks out and says, oh yeah, well, daddy and mommy got removed and I'm a publisher because this happened. So it is about liability, isn't it? Potential liability. Alleged wrongdoing. We've got to use the word alleged. Romans 13 talks about the superior authorities, and this is where it gets manipulated. So a leader who's crossed the line and said, oh yeah, beat your child, or use corporal punishment. The child is punished, labeled an apostate for telling the truth. The parent is punished likewise for either telling the truth or for acting out on the law, following counsel from the authorities in the religious structure. And so it's a mess. It's a real mess. People are ostracized, shunned under spiritual pretenses. Oh, they can say hello now at the Kingdom Hall. Hello. But people aren't stupid. The subconscious still recognizes that there isn't the social freedom that they had hoped to enjoy by becoming part of that sub-tribe or that religious tribe. So the congregation is told a very sanitized version. We're no longer told about David and Bathsheba and what happened to Bathsheba's husband, sent to the front line as essentially David's men pulled back and got him killed. So they only stick with what's in the scriptures. They don't stick with, oh, hang on, there are modern parallels to what is going on in the scriptures. Humans are humans. They have their light side, they have their dark side. And so the congregation, happily, like Paradise Lost, with happy angels and a happy paradise, think that everything's fine because of a sanitized version of events that justify the removals and avoid transparency and accountability. Brother so-and-so who's told the congregation, you can go and beat your kids. Well, guess what? He's your next circuit overseer. He's your next branch committee member and maybe your next governing body member if he's very experienced in flipping property. That's his talent. But, tell your kids that they can't go into higher education and focus in on that. They must go and pioneer out in the ministry. And so, yes, Brother Jedele has entered into a controversial situation. Is he doing good with his knowledge of properties? I believe he is. Somebody has to deal with it. But at the same vein, you've got, this contradiction that's going on. You've got this thing where we're saying, oh, we actually need people who are experienced with property, but send your children out to become pioneers, and if you send them to higher education or to education we don't particularly like, well, guess what? We're going to discipline you there too, and make it very difficult for you, and remove privileges, and bring you before people to explain yourself. And don't get irritated. Make sure your body language doesn't show that you're suppressing a feeling of tremendous frustration that we can interpret as anger. Because if you dare flip out, we're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks with everything we can. So, victims are silenced, perpetrators in power are protected. The system reinforces itself through fear, loyalty, and suppression of truth. And what is the final outcome? The final outcome is that you have a theological irony where it's protecting Jehovah's name. If you want to think of Jehovah as a brand name, or if you want to say, no, Jehovah is supreme consciousness, okay, I don't want to get into that. The theological irony is it's protecting Jehovah's name as the supreme sovereign, the universal consciousness and creator of everything, while subtracting that actually it's the human element that's gotten involved here and has created a big mess in his name with, saying that it's with his authority. So they're saying they need to do this to protect Jehovah, to protect his name, like Jehovah doesn't have enough power to protect his own name and step in and go, oh, by the way, I'm God, the same one who appeared to Moses when he was alone in the wilderness by himself and saw a big burning bush. And he was the same person who was alone when he went up the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments. Okay, you get the point. So they say they're doing this to protect Jehovah. Does he need protection? Imagine God in heaven with his angels and spiritual technology, if you want to call it such, needing to have protection by humans who are largely confused. Oh dear. So protecting the image of the organization is not protecting God's justice or truth. It's just a mess. So when people equate the organization's reputation with Jehovah's name, it's actually blasphemous overreach. Yes, I comprehend this idea of preservation for dear Granny, who has invested so much of her life and is so old that her mind is crystallized as a 90-year-old in all the investments that she's made in her properties and donations and family to the organization. So at what point do you say, well, Gran, we can't actually tell you about the complexities of what's going on because it's cruelty to you. We don't want to burst your bubble. Any moment now, like you say, you could pop off the scene and die. And we want you to have good last days. We don't want you stretching your mind into controversies that you're just going to cry about. So it's very difficult. The situation in the congregation becomes one opposite of what true spiritual shepherds should do. That is, standing up for the innocent and not throwing them under the bus. Do I sound like an apostate? I can see how. I'm not blind to that. But to my friends who are in Bethel and who still consult with me and treat me as a Jehovah's Witness, which is incredible, and still link me to elder systems, which blows my mind, and then later say, oh yes, but this is consultancy, we may we record this please and date it and put your initials on. I go, I haven't changed, folks. Yes, you can record it as long as we're transparent and we don't abuse the situation. How about that? And so that's where I am. I'm still being treated as I'm still being treated as a congregation elder. And I go, what? Folks, if you can't follow this, you can comprehend why somebody like me is now talking like this and just saying, look, I've got to operate with the truth wave. And I realize it can be a big muddled mess, but hey, we live in an age of AI that we hope can look into these things and sort out these kind of complexities and translate Japanese and Russian and whatever they speak in Tibet in a way that comprehends all of the nuances of our natures, all the different languages and different interpretations that make up our human society. Different frequencies of spectrum. If you want to say different shards of the crystal or different frequencies of God, the supreme consciousness. Well, this is where we are, folks. It's an exciting time. It's a fearful time because we go, oh, did we actually destroy ourselves and we've crossed dimension lines? Okay, that's getting into some major academia. And to try and keep my mind focused on what's happened here, let's try and press on. The legal and ethical next steps in a place like South Africa, where an elder has got up not once, not twice, several times, while there's been warning, in writing, witnessed and spoken about ad nauseum. The kind of behavior to, number one, tell your congregation and community to go and stick with corporal punishment as long as you're loving. But when it's challenged, you're forced into a situation of documenting the whole thing, transcribing it. And they're very worried about audio recordings. Don't come into an elders meeting with an audio recording. And if you've got written evidence and we can see that you're actually a skilled transcriber, man, we're just going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. Because, of course, you can send that document straight back to your circuit overseer and say, well, didn't you just instruct us to do this? Giving you an opportunity just to take a look at the transcript and adjust what you've said. And if you don't, I'm going to copy in a couple of other elders. And, oh, are they taking sides with you now? Okay, we have a potential legal case building up. Because you can't do that and keep people trapped. Well, I suppose you can practically, but is it ethical? Many in the planetary tribe are saying, no, not ethical. We don't stand for this. And in fact, even among Jehovah's Witnesses in your top tiers, when they see this happening, they go, we're going to remove the circuit overseer. But they can't. They might be really angry about it or express anger, and I don't know if that's a pseudo humility or a pseudo righteousness or what, but I've seen top tiers flip out, start swearing. And I mean using really bad language. And you're going, wait, hang on, this is one of our key leaders here, right? And they're angry for a couple of reasons, and I'm gonna venture this conclusion, right or wrong. I think they're angry because they've been exposed, not because necessarily you had a good elder who saw that something was illegal and said something about it and stuck to his guns, and was told, "Oh, you're proud, you lack humility, you seeking to be on the governing body." And I want to tell you something about that. With all of this complexity, who would want to be? I mean it. You know, they can say to a young person, 20-year-old, oh, you're an elder now. Congratulations, well done. You are the overseer of some special position at the branch. And the 20-year-old gets on his knees and he goes, hallelujah, thank you, Jehovah. What a wonderful privilege. I think I'm like one of the young kings in the Bible. Solomon, please give me wisdom, God, to carry out this weighty responsibility. And unfortunately, it affects the ego to such a degree. He doesn't realize he's inheriting the worst books from dear old Uncle Joe, who's now 106 and is barely coherent and is being looked after by pioneers and washed down to his private areas because he's incontinent and can no longer look after the needs of the area or region, but actually has got his own skeletons in the closet, much in the same way that the new elder who's put the community into jeopardy has. You see, it all works together. If there is a sin, well, that elder can approach 2 other elders or 3 elders here who are friends, and they can say, well, thank you for your confession, and we pray over you, and we're not going to remove you as an elder, and you're going to love us because you love Jehovah, for he forgives freely those who are honest. And it's created this circular dependency, the circular loyalty, which for all intents and purposes was to create a good community. But now we see it's abusing things. So let this video be my affidavit. Here's my face. My authenticity. And I can now speak. Told you about my own personal injuries. And it's been hell. I can't tell you that after this video I'm not going to collapse in a heap or have to be medicated or need medical attention or something like that. In the past I've needed to have that. My career, I've been working in rural areas under extremely difficult situations. And they've just sent me from one, excuse me for saying, hellhole after another. Why? Because I don't learn. So here's the toilet brush, Brother Grey. There's another toilet for you. Get into all the dirty bits, please, humbly, because that's your career from now on. And I go, fine, I've never had a problem with that. I've been cleaning up mess for ages. So what's the problem? And they just look at me and they go, oh, well, he seems to like his assignment. Let's send him off to some awful situation that's at the center of political controversy. Matt, we want to send you to Israel. That's where we want to send you. And I'm going, where in Israel? And to do what? Okay, hold on, we've changed our minds. We're going to send you to the City of London. Okay, to do what exactly? No, scrap that. Washington, D.C. And I'm just sitting back and I'm going, this is amazing, folks. I used to like popcorn. I would have made popcorn and could start popping this at the incredible show and theatrical spectacle. So yes, I appreciate South African police. I know that the things that they are having to deal with are incredible. And I've been at the forefront of that, be it drug abuse, human trafficking. I've had to save people from vigilante justice, and as it turned out, I've had police nearby and I've been able to get their help. If you want to say providentially. And people say, oh no, this was a gangster, or this was somebody who is disloyal, we're going to perform this on him as vigilante justice. And I go, you can't do that. I appreciate this might be a really terrible person, but that's what those police for just in the other road are there to handle. Otherwise it's all going to fall apart. And thankfully they've intervened perfectly. Judge for yourself. You've got your public records to look at. So yes, this is my YouTube affidavit, if you want to call it such. It's just a way to talk because I can't. It's even difficult to get into a police station and talk like this, because they're so pressed with some of the most dreadful things you can ever imagine. Overloaded. And I find detectives asleep at their desks, and the one detective says to me, oh, Mr. Grey, please don't let this worry you, we're all paid the same. As a constable, same payment, and he's face down in his food because he's fallen asleep, because he's overworked and disillusioned. I leave it to them to sort that out, because I'm sure that's not normal. It gets worse, folks. I'm not even talking about a fraction of what goes on here. But I have carefully documented the patterns. I've carefully consulted legal advocates to try and help with what to do next. It's not isolated events. We can see patterns of systemic abuse. So, what am I doing? Exposing what is often hidden in the shadow system of control masked as spiritual guidance. It's not an isolated problem. It's a structural failing and moral betrayal of trust. And if we don't get it right in this world of AI, I believe AI is going to reflect the worst of us. But there is a chance where AI can reflect the best of us. And I'm talking in terms of whether it's a mirror. And I'm quite sure that a police system or a legal system will employ artificial intelligence beyond PhD level mind. Many are not alone in suffering this kind of thing. But we have come to a pivotal stage in our human existence where it is very important to flap our butterfly wing and reverse the tornado. You know, they talk about the butterfly wing that creates the tornado. I'm interested in saying shh, quiet to the windstorm. So this isn't just a personal issue. It's not just why it can hurt so badly and be so crippling. You know my channel with music and all these messages. It's not just a personal issue. It is betrayal by those claiming divine authority. So let this all add up to be monologues upon summaries, reports, ways to stimulate thinking that protects community safety. And I hope myself too. I don't want to necessarily go down in flames. I like being alive. And I like contact with people. I like speaking with others who've been through these kind of things and offering empathy, but not just saying, oh, I'm sorry and it's terrible that this happened to you, but being able to try and be solution oriented in breaking through and making our planetary society better. So that's been quite a lot. Thank you for listening. If you've come this far, if you've been able to bear it, thank you very, very much for being with me. You're important to me. I'm the reason that you're here. I have some exceptional friends and I have exceptional family, and I'm very, very grateful. And I'm grateful to you for being here with me. So thank you.